The Metropolitan Police has handed out hundreds of fixed penalty notices this week as part of its operation to make London's roads safer. The initiative comes after 6 cyclists were killed in a fortnight earlier this month. 1,392 motorists have already been penalised and 750 cyclists. Well, let's cross now to Mark Ashdown, who's outside Transport for London's headquarters, where a vigil is being held. And campaigners want more investment for cycle safety, Mark.
That's right, Riz. This vigil is still going on, but about 20 minutes ago there was a sea of bodies around here, right outside Transport for London headquarters, as cyclists staged a mass die-in to bring their message that they feel not enough is being done. Now, this is a hugely emotive issue. All are aware of the problem. The question now is, can they find a solution?
Rush hour brought to a standstill by 1,000 bodies with one simple message: no more deaths on London's roads.
You're constantly having to basically protect your life, and that we shouldn't have to do that.
Proper investment and an understanding between everyone, car drivers, lorry drivers, ourselves as cyclists, pedestrians, for us all to take responsibility for that change to happen.
After 6 deaths in a few weeks, there was another cyclist seriously injured today, again involving a lorry.
One thing cyclists want is more consideration in the planning phase. This is set to be one of London's largest developments. There already appears to be brand new pavements in place. It's the ideal opportunity, they say, to help provide more to keep them safe.
Donnachie McCarthy organised today's direct action. He maintains TfL and individual boroughs should ring-fence money specifically to improve cycle safety.
We want a real budget. At the moment we're getting crumbs. So we want 10% of the transport budgets at London and borough level to be devoted to protecting vulnerable road users. Secondly, we want an integrated cycling network in London within 5 years. And thirdly, we want it to stay at the top table. TfL board is made up of business people, the vested interests. There's no representation for pedestrians, cyclists, the real people of London. We want 2 places on the board of TfL.
Mass die-ins were staged in Holland in the 70s, prompting a cycling revolution. Councils say they're willing to cooperate, but changes need to be London-wide.
If we are going to follow a Dutch-style approach, it will mean redefining and replanning how traffic moves around our capital in a way that we haven't really looked at before. That needs strategic overview, that needs the mayor to bring councils together soon.
Cyclists say they would like a seat at that table. Do you think they should?
Absolutely, they should be there. Of course they should be there because, they have the knowledge day in, day out. They're experiencing the problems and challenges of getting across London.
Transport for London says it's spending £1 billion in upgrades, overhauling junctions, segregating major roads to help protect cyclists. Safety, they say, is their top priority. Now they have to convince this lot.
Well, the vigil's starting to break up now. They're going to reopen the road. We could talk to a couple of people who've been personally affected by safety, Nazam and Tom. Let's come to you first, Tom. Tell us what happened to you.
4 years ago in December, I was struck while I was on the pavement by a bendy bus, and I was obviously nearly dead. I was thrown into a coma. My lungs popped, and I was in a coma over Christmas and New Year's.
You were a pedestrian, so it just highlights that safety is an issue for everyone on the road.
Absolutely. The point is, especially on Oxford Street, which is Europe's busiest shopping street, which is the highest rate of collisions of any street in London.
Let's bring in Nazam now. I know it's a personal tragedy. If you would just tell us what happened with your daughter.
My daughter Hope, she was only 13 when 2 years and 2 months ago, on her way back from school, she attempted to cross the road at a puffin crossing where an HGV driver just literally drove over her and her push bike. Hope was unfortunately trapped for 20 minutes. All the emergency services were there quickly. It took 20 minutes to cut her free from the lorry.
She tragically died after. You're supporting this now?
She was pronounced dead on the scene, yes. And looking into the incident, I've realised that there were many things that could have prevented this, unfortunate.
Now, you spoke a moment ago. What do you think needs to happen now on the roads?
There needs to be regulation on lorries, lorry access to busy urban areas. It should be made compulsory that they have safety equipment fitted, because one of those equipment that will cost around £500 would have saved my daughter's life. And you know, nobody should lose a child. It's the biggest tragedy to human beings, you know.
And Tom, just finally, just to bring you back in, you're obviously supporting this. You feel more could be done.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm supporting the pedestrianisation of Oxford Street, which is Europe's busiest shopping street and has a very high collision rate, and this involves TfL buses. TfL buses have been involved in 2,000 collisions that have resulted in serious injury in the last 5 years.
Okay, well listen, thank you very much both of you for joining us. Now, all sides agree that more needs to be done. One thing that keeps coming up is a summit. Everybody wants the mayor to get involved and hold a summit with a seat for everyone around the table, and this can only increase the pressure on that happening. Riz.
Mark, thanks very much.
Yeah, interesting. So with me, Jack Hart from the Freedom Association, a British group campaigning for personal freedom and responsibility, and Lucy Brisbane, a student and journalist who objects to these groups and these websites. I mean, I can see that it's a bit kind of off to take someone's photo without their permission, but is it a big issue?
I think it's a big issue when something like this begins to change people's behaviour, such as with the Women Eating on Tubes page, which led people like me to sort of think, oh, I don't actually want to eat on the tube in case these 20,000 people that like this page on Facebook are going to be out there taking my photo and putting it up on a page. I think there's a reason they don't ask your permission, because it's not for a positive reason.
Yeah, and I think you've had your own picnic on the tube as a kind of protest, to sort of, you know, to sort of poke some of these people in the eye a little bit, and I think we can look at some of the pictures that you had. Yeah, there we go. Are these some of your...
Yep, some of the people coming along, yeah. We had quite a big turnout. I think a lot of people feel quite strongly about this, and we wanted to turn it around and make a sort of positive event that celebrated the sort of things that they were depicting as negative or laughing at.
OK, would you, before I bring in Jack, would you do anything about it? What...
I think this is not a place for legislation. I think this is a place for us to start a conversation, which is why I didn't write some sort of scathing article in response. I wanted to start a conversation and talk to the people that want to upload these photos.
Yeah, Jack, would you agree with that?
I actually would agree with that. I think one of our big concerns is this might end up being a catalyst so people feel entitled to call for more restrictions and more legislation and prevent people from taking photographs in public places.
But don't you think there is something to be said for privacy, and that people have a right to that being protected? And if you say they have a right to have that protected, well, then legislation is the obvious solution.
Well, legislation doesn't work in that sense. Are you going to expect the police to, you know, continually monitor social media and then try and assess whether every photograph that's on there has the person's consent when they're in it? We're better off having an adult conversation, talking to each other and actually understanding what we're OK with and what we find acceptable on social media.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that something has changed in... Because everyone has got a phone which has got a camera facility on it, you don't have to pay for processing, that people are just doing that the whole time. I mean, I kind of sometimes think people go through life never experiencing anything except through taking a photo of whatever it is that's happening.
Yeah, and I think this is a relatively new problem, because never before have people had cameras on them all the time or access to thousands of people to share it with. So I think it's a new problem that we need to start talking about and dealing with in a social way, in a positive way, rather than making laws against it. But we need to definitely start a conversation that talks about this.
See, I think one of the important things to remember is lots of the laws that govern how this works were written before social media was a thing, before, you know, camera phones were in existence. Therefore, we've got to be really careful about how we sort of look at a legislative framework to make it all work, because the last thing we want is people being prosecuted under old laws, but in the same sense, the last thing I'd really want is new laws which are even more restrictive than the ones we have currently.
But how do you get it into people's heads that, you know, the etiquette is just... And particularly when you're going to... I mean, you know, there have been a few times where, you know, because I'm on television or whatever, you know, I'm aware that people are... You know, with Google Glass, you're never going to be aware. People could be filming you all the time.
See, I think this is one of the things, maybe looking at things like citizenship education in schools, actually having a conversation with young people before they start being out around with their phones, taking photographs of people, get them to understand what people are, you know, OK with and how society's happy with things like that. Really, the last thing we want, though, is to have such restrictive rules that prevent people from doing what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, I don't know. Have you got friends who have taken photos? They've spotted a celebrity in a cafe or wherever, and they thought, ooh.
Yeah, I I think we all take photos all the time, and I think it's kind of a new thing to start thinking about it and thinking about where that photo is going to be used, how it's going to be used, and I think it's really important to address it as a problem. I've definitely taken photos of people before, but this has made me sort of start to think about it and start to think about whether that's okay.
I just want to ask you one other thing, Lucy. Do you think there is a sort of sexual menacing side to this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of pages, even worse than the Women Eating on Tubes page, sort of talking about it. Specifically, women are often targeted, but men are targeted too, and I think it's a lot about shaming people and about bullying people without their knowledge of even them being discussed, and there's definitely a sort of sexual element to it, as you can see from the comments on the Women Eating on Tubes page.
Jack, there's been a whole debate here on public figures and what the right to privacy is. Where do you think it extends? Where do you think that, you know, someone walking down the street, there should be an absolute ban that newspapers should not be allowed to publish photos if you just happen to catch somebody out and about, or, you know, or they're in their garden or whatever?
Well, no, because what really concerns me is if you have an absolute ban like that, is where does it go? Where does it end? At what point do you say that you can take photographs? It really is, I think we need to be sort of slightly more grown up about this and discuss, and also just accept socially when we think things are okay. It really is crazy to do. You know,
OK, and we're going to stop it there because those hands are going and making me feel claustrophobic. They've been coming towards me all the way through that discussion. Both of you, thank you very much.
A former Sun reporter, Ben Ashford, has been cleared of handling stolen property and accessing data on a woman's iPhone after it was stolen during a night out in Manchester back in October 2009. Let's hear more now. Our correspondent Ben Gagan is at the Old Bailey for us. Tell us more about events in court, Ben.
Yes, Julian. Well, Ben Ashford was given this phone in 2009 by a woman who told him that it had been found at a nightclub in Manchester. And when he looked at the phone, he found there were all sorts of text messages, text exchanges and photos on it, in particular texts to and from... Excuse me, sorry.
I was accused of masturbating in a tube station.
I think we'll leave it there, Julian. We'll come back to you when we've dealt with this disturbance.
Absolutely. No, Ben, we quite understand. We will return to you when you're not interrupted by others as you try to tell us the outcome of that court case at the Old Bailey. Apologies for that.